Hey everybody, how we doing?
Happy Tuesday night. Look at us. All right, so here's the story. Last week after the debate, we did a podcast and a bunch of people tuned in. So we thought maybe evenings. We should do evenings. So we're trying. I don't know. We're trying things. We're people have
Mixing it
changed.
up.
Yeah. We're not stuck.
We're experimenting.
Yeah. You tell our wives and you tell our kids, we are not stuck in our ways. Proof positive. We're doing the Common Good Politics podcast on Tuesday night, not on Tuesday morning. That shows real flexibility.
Yeah. But speaking of experiments, this great experiment in democracy that we call America, some are saying is almost over. I mean, there's
Keep it.
if you can keep it. Yeah, it was a big week for the Supreme Court, and some decisions came down, and we're gonna get into all that tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about all of it. I'm particularly interested in how everybody is feeling compared to what we were feeling the other night. Because the other night we were all pretty down after the president's performance during the debate, and a few days to kind of sit with it, reflect a little bit, curious if anything's changed, if we're feeling the same way, or where we're at.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, I've changed. My sadness has turned to full-on depression and panic and anxiety. So that's where I am. I frankly, I cannot believe the response from the Democratic superstructure to basically tell us you didn't see what you thought you saw, and don't worry about it. I mean, the campaign chose to share polling, a high level view of their polling from 4 swing states that Biden did not lose within a few days. Polling right after that did not lose support, but he is behind in those key swing states, and they're thinking the good news is he didn't lose anymore, so he's not behind more than he was behind before.
Yeah.
What he needs to do is to be in front in those states. So when your argument is, well,
we're not losing worse than we were.
Right.
Yeah.
That wasn't the point to just keep losing at the same rate. It's just wild to me that I don't know, the rest of the people weren't like, hey, I think Joe Biden needs to consider thanking the country for the privilege of serving and doing decades in the Senate and then 8 years as vice president and 4 years as president, and say, I think that's my contribution. Let's now after the debate performance. I am
it seemed
shocked. Not even thinking he should or shouldn't. I'm just shocked that of the response, and I'm shocked that Joe Biden doesn't look at that and watch that whole thing and say, yeah, I did not fulfill my presidential duty. Because it's a presidential duty to speak to the American people coherently. That's
in that case, he's immune. Should not be held against him. And we'll get into all that. I have changed. I have a pretty significant change that I have in my mind that I've made. I set up a question for us near the end of our conversation, and that question was, who won the debate? And Dan, I think you said Donald Trump. Doug, you said the Trump's supporters, and I said Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. I was wrong. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash did not win the debate. I'll tell you who won the debate. Dean Phillips won the debate.
Yes, he did.
Dean Phillips, congressman from Minnesota, Doug's congressman.
My representative.
Yeah, his representative in Washington D.C.
My perfect friend too.
Went out on the campaign trail and said, "Hey, we need to have a serious primary here.
Yeah.
Joe Biden's not going to be able to win this." Didn't so much make age a factor, but just kind of looking at the polling and looking at the whole situation, said, "We need a different nominee," and no one else is willing to do it besides Marianne Williamson, parenthetically. And so I'm throwing my hat in the ring, and Dean Phillips was laughed at and made fun of, and jokes were made at his expense. And when he ended up dropping out, there was a lot of circling the ring and celebrating, people kind of laughing at him and berating him and doing a victory lap related to him dropping out. And now, after a few days of reflection, I'm like, hey, I think Dean was right.
Had a
Dean
point.
might have been right all along.
Yep, had a point. It would have been good for Joe Biden, as it would have been good for Barack Obama, as it would have been good for Donald Trump, to have been keeping up for the last 6 months in his debating skills and his public presentation skills of how his administration has done. That would have been wise. It would have been wise to act like you have to earn it and it's not yours. And that's the thing that irritates me about the way we do this.
Mm-hmm.
I've long held, it's really a statement when somebody wants to set it up with that.
I've long held
that presidency should be 5 years with no reelection.
Mm-hmm.
It just, reelections are not good for the country.
Mm-hmm.
Presidents are better in their second terms. They behave differently. They behave better. They behave more in the common good and less in the partisan frame. It would just be better. Setting that aside, if we're going to have reelection, where a president goes from being everyone's president to becoming a partisan player again for reelection, and then if wins, doesn't play that game the second term, then they really shouldn't act like it's just theirs for the taking. And presidents do it every time. And it would be better if the system said, hey, you got to make a run for it again, though. There's no gimmies. There's no gimmies. And in this case, it would have served the country. It would have served the country very well. And a good president should walk away with that. You should, if you're being challenged in a primary and you're the sitting president by your own party, you should walk away with it. It should be easy, but you should do it. You should go through the motions. They didn't want to. And look, the fact that Joe Biden has not been in the public eye enough for people to be used to him. This was shocking and surprising to people. Yeah. And it's just not going to bode well. I don't know again if he should drop out or shouldn't drop out, but it seems it should be under deep consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
apparently
they really tried to just steamroll through this. This headline says White House seeks to turn the page after Biden's debate performance. They say it was an off night. He had a cold. He'd been traveling.
Oh, good Lord.
And within minutes of the debate finishing up, disastrous performance, even those that would likely maybe be the nominee if Biden had dropped out, Gavin Newsom was out in front of it saying, now more than ever, we have to support Biden and his campaign. I'm getting, tons of, text messages and robocalls saying,
yes,
pitch in for Biden because we need money now more than ever. And I was shocked that it took that turn. They were like ready for it to be a disaster and had planned accordingly. They got all the surrogates ready to get out in front of it.
Yeah. And they tried to turn the page by having a campaign rally the next day that the president did very good at. He looked rested. He looked relaxed. He had, a button unbuttoned on his collar. He wasn't wearing a tie, and he was using the teleprompter. And he gave a really rousing speech. It was quite good, and that buoyed a lot of people. And then after the Supreme Court decision, he came out and made a statement about that. Didn't take any questions. I don't know if we've got a picture from that, but he looked shockingly orange in in that
No, I
press
didn't.
conference? It's that, like, that old adage, like, beware the monster that you fight, because you might turn into that monster. Something along those lines, whatever that phrase is. He he was very orange. It might have just been the lighting there in whatever room it was in the White House, but yeah. So apparently, the Biden family gathered at Camp David to have a little family powwow, and it seems like most of the family is in favor of him continuing to run, led by his wife Jill Biden, as well as the smartest man Joe Biden knows, his son Hunter.
It just shouldn't be a family decision. This is not a family matter. This is a national situation. To me, this whole idea that, like, a presidency, and this isn't just for Joe Biden, this is across the board, but that a presidency is something that you and your family should decide if you're going to try to keep or not. That's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. Joe Biden's performance at that debate would have made someone say, if he was applying for a job at Walmart, I don't think you'd make him the cashier.
Yep. Greeter at the door.
Most certainly wouldn't ask him to be the CEO.
Yeah.
That performance was not presidential worthy on any level. That's not a bad night. A bad night means you would have done better, but there was a set of circumstances that caused you to not perform up to your capacity. What makes any of us think that his capacity to handle a debate is higher than that?
Yeah. Now, if
it is, let me just say this. If it is, and Donald Trump's not going to debate him again, there's no chance Donald Trump's going to do that again, because he was a disaster. Debate RFK, or debate Cornel West, or debate Dean Phillips. Do it again. Debate somebody every week until we get to November to cleanse the palate. If you think it was an off night, give us a taste of it being an off night.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, it's not just about winning the election. For sure it is. It's all we care about around here. We're 100% in. If Joe Biden's the nominee, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that he's elected president and not Donald Trump. Full stop. No. Yep. But it's also competency to do the job.
Yeah.
We actually need the president, especially after the Supreme Court ruling, which I know we're going to get to. We actually need the president to be there. Yeah. To be sharp. Go.
Is it fair to think that a debate is an indicator of whether or not someone's competent to do the job? Because this kind of what you do in a debate is, it's not part of the American presidency. It's not like England, where the prime minister goes to the House of Lords, the House of Commons, one of them. And, they do that thing where they, like, ask the prime minister questions and everybody, it's just like that type of thing is not part of the American presidency. So maybe these kinds of debates are not a good indicator of whether or not Joe Biden is up for the actual job of doing the presidency. Because in every other situation, he's going to have advisors with him. He's going to have notes. He's going to have a teleprompter. He's going to be able to script things. And, I don't know.
Yeah, I think in some ways you're right. Like, debate performance and oratory skills maybe shouldn't be at the top of the requirement list for being president. But it's still a piece of it. Like, you still have to talk in front of dignitaries and other heads of state and make speeches. Like, that's like 50% of the job is just talking at people.
Right.
And instilling confidence in the American
people. He can give
people.
the speech, as we saw the next day. He can give the speech. What he can't do is the unprepared statements off the top of his head.
Apparently think of the words himself. Yes. Okay. So
apparently think of the words himself.
And again, I have a Biden t-shirt, which I wear around. not his, one with his name on it.
It'd be amazing if you had one of his T-shirts.
One of the things that is the responsibility of a president, Barack Obama put this in a really great way one time. I heard him say, we were having dinner and I heard him say, I mean, I was eating dinner and he was on TV and I heard him say, but still.
Yeah.
Any significant issue that comes before me is by definition difficult, or someone else lower in the decision-making chain would have made it.
Mm-hmm.
I only deal with the most contentious and difficult questions. That's the role. When you have someone who's asked by a reporter with television cameras pointing at their face and the American people watching, tell us your view on, name the topic, and you can't articulate it or use the full 2 minutes to articulate it, your view or what your administration has done or is going to do, you're not actually in a debate. This is the thing about our modern debates. They're not debates. He didn't talk to Donald Trump. There was no debate. They were asked questions in front of each other by a reporter, and then the other person had a chance to comment on that person's response. That's what they were doing. They were both talking to the American people via the prompt given by the question. That is fundamental to the presidency, I would argue. Fundamental to it. And if you can't look at someone who has a differing opinion about your job and articulate clearly your view in contrast to theirs, then I also don't think you're fulfilling the one responsibility that a president have, which is to say, here's the direction, here's where we're going, here's how I use this incredible power that's given to this office that I hold the position of. That is, I hear you, Rob, and I get it, and I think debates are silly and all the rest of it because they're not actually debates. I mean, there was one good one when Barack Obama sat across the table from Mitt Romney. That was great. Remember that? Oh,
Yeah.
this is all of a sudden I'm Chris Farley here. Remember that time? But it was great. And it turned out that Mitt Romney was right about a couple of things that I mocked him about. Like
Russia being the biggest threat.
And the Navy. Yeah, as it turns out, that was a big deal. Okay, so but that was it was a personal exchange. There were ideas being exchanged. It was great.
There were smiles and handshakes and civility, even in the midst of really significant differences. So, I had a conversation today with a family member who's a Trump supporter, and they said to me, "So are you still voting for Biden?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he's the nominee, absolutely." But there is, it's not just us that are, having these questions about Joe Biden. It's not just the media. There are significant Democrats and, former Democrats who are having these kinds of questions or asking these questions publicly. Congressman Lloyd Doggett, congressman from Texas, suggested that maybe the Democrats need a different nominee. Jared Golden, congressman from Maine, which is often one of the most contested districts in the country. It's one of those districts that is always on everybody's watch list to see who's going to win it. Jared Golden, Democrat congressman from Maine, wrote in an op-ed today that he will be voting for Joe Biden, but if Donald Trump wins, and he expects that he will, he guess he'd be okay with it. And you've got
be okay with it.
Yeah, that was the quote from the article that he wrote.
Wow.
Joe Manchin, who famously, loves to undermine Democrats at every turn, has suggesting maybe he is going to be breaking with his support of Joe Biden. And one of our favorites, former congressman, former Senate candidate Tim Ryan, suggesting today on Twitter that Democrats need a different nominee other than Joe Biden. Now, these are not we're not talking about Barack Obama. We're not talking about Nancy Pelosi. We're not talking about Chuck Schumer. We're talking about people who are much more on the fringes of the Democratic establishment and infrastructure, but it's significant. I think that they say you watch. I love the NFL draft. Love to watch. What players get taken, when, and they always have the scores from the combine of like how they ran the 40-yard dash and what they could lift and how high they could jump. And they have this NFL combine in Indianapolis every year where they put all these players, college players, through the paces. And often that's what determines where someone gets drafted. And every once in a while, you'll hear someone say, yeah, this guy passes the eye test. He might not have done great at the combine with all of these kind of arbitrary metrics, but I've seen him play the game and he's good at it. Now, I think this could go two ways for Joe Biden. I think one is we could look at the debate like the combine and go, okay, that was kind of artificial. Or collectively, we as Americans say, hey, this guy's not passing the eye test. Like, I don't need this interpreted for me. I can see with my own eyes, and I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope that's not the case. If Joe Biden's going to stay in the race, he needs to do a number of things over the next 12 weeks to make the American people not feel like by voting for him, they're basically saying what you said, which was what you said to your relatives, same thing I have to say, which is, if he's the nominee, I will. You want a little more enthusiasm than that, because that's what a lot of Republicans are stuck with. Well, I don't like Trump. I think he's a clown. But I'm going to stick with him because of it. Like, that doesn't sit well with the American people. And if what you're going to get into here is just which team has more voter solidity, then America's in trouble.
Yeah. Now, Dorvell asked an interesting question in the chat about, let's say that he drops out. Let's say if something happens, who would have the best chance of beating Trump in the election? Who can the Democrats reasonably nominate and run in the next few months in Biden's place? And I'll tell you the answer to that. And I think, and you guys know, I have been, and this is something else where I've changed, I have been a clear Gavin Newsom fan for, not fan. I have thought that Gavin Newsom is running for president for a very long time, and thought that he would, replace Joe Biden at some point. He's not the guy. The guy to beat Donald Trump is Gretchen Whitmer. Michigan is a swing state. It's a key battleground state for the presidency. Gretchen Whitmer is the popular governor of Michigan. Takes that state out of play in the electoral process. I know. Gabbit's is giving me a hard time. A little play on words there, Gabbit. Gabbit's just having a little bit of fun. And Gretchen Whitmer is the person, because it's not Kamala Harris. It's not. I wish it was, but it's not.
Me too.
If the Democrats have to go with a completely new slate, they better have a woman at the top of that ticket to compensate for the fact that they are not going to go with Kamala Harris this time around. And so I think Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, is the person.
I would love that. As a Michigander here, she's great, and I think stands a chance,
Look, if you saw signs come October in your yard that said Whitmer Warnock for president.
I've seen the Warlock Whitmer signs.
The Whitmer Warnock signs. That would go a long way.
Yeah.
That could who's in Georgia? Yeah. Could do a lot for the constituency that want the black voting constituency, the woman voting constituency. There's no question in my mind that ticket, or a Gretchen Whitmer or a Deval Patrick. There's other people as well. But just to be blunt, There are some very clear demands within the voting population about who's going to be on the ticket.
Yeah.
And if Kamala Harris doesn't run, chooses not to, or somehow isn't, I don't know, she would also have to say no, thank you. I mean, the system would just not, it's not going to take it. So a lot of things would have to happen. But that, I think you're right, Rob. I think that would ignite unbelievable passion in this country, and people would flock to that ticket. It would feel future. It would feel like it's correcting a number of issues of how candidates are picked and who gets to be president. It would be the thing that would be a tremendous ticket.
Yeah. Now, I think we know who's not going to be president, and that is Robert Kennedy Jr. We've had our fun with RFK Jr. On this podcast.
Have we?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to be done with him now. We have to be done poking at him. So what you mean?
Well, I think we need to talk about this article that came out today. And Doug, I know you haven't seen this. It's an article in which that cites a friend of RFK Jr.'s suggesting that he might have eaten a dog. And I don't know, Dan, do you have the picture? Do you have the picture?
I debated.
Oh, we got to.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even see. Is that the body of a dog that he's holding?
Yes. It's a barbecued dog. Yes.
No. And they put a black bar across the eyes of the person that's with him.
Yeah.
Okay, that's stunning.
To protect the identity of that poor woman.
Who doesn't
apparently
identity protected.
Is also eating a dog.
Apparently, or feigning eating a dog. Like they're faking it. This looks like, but I don't know. Is that really like a roasting of a dog on a spigot like a pig?
Yes.
Look, we don't.
That's what Korea, is that right?
I don't know. I didn't read the article closely.
Is that where they are? They're in Korea.
In Korea, and when in Rome,
as they say,
I guess.
when in Korea, do as the Koreans do. I mean,
to be fair though, I've never heard that Koreans eat dogs, so that seems weird either way.
I feel like I've heard that, but I don't know that.
I feel like I've heard that too. I mean, there's so many Kristi Noem jokes here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who knew that the demise of dogs would play such a significant role in this presidential election?
Rob, it's a dog-eat-dog world.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, that says Kristi Noem shot.
Okay, that's enough for the RFK Jr. I liked what Dan texted earlier when I sent this article to the group chat. Dan texted, maybe that's where he got the brain worm.
Sorry, everyone.
About this guy, it just doesn't. Well, he could easily say I was at a thing and it was a cultural deal and I didn't, and I'm making fun of the picture, and then he could call Al Franken and see how does that go when you're just goofing on a cultural faux pas and faux pas. I didn't mean that joke. Pfeiffer is watching right now because he would love that. And then Ken says, "Is that how Kennedy got the brain worm?" Yeah, that's
Ken and Dan on the same page.
Great minds.
Yeah, Look, I'm reluctant to say this because it sounds like people who just don't care about the particularities, but that our current options for the presidency was that guy, Donald Trump, an 82-year-old on election day, and Cornel West.
And Jill Stein.
Is she still in?
Yeah, she's in.
Oh, the Russian-backed candidate, Jill Stein. The Green Party? Is she green? Is she green again?
I think so.
Or is she red?
Yeah, it's really something, isn't it?
Wow.
I mean, yeah. It's
It's
wild.
bleak. You know what else is bleak? This ruling from the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So we got to get into this. The Supreme Court said Trump has absolute immunity for core acts only. But the gray area is, what is a core presidential act? What's an official thing that the president does, and what's something that could be prosecuted?
Mm-hmm.
And they've sent some of that back to the lower courts to figure out. But it's basically the president has immunity for everything. It's assumed that the president has immunity for everything, and it's become a really high threshold to prosecute the president for anything.
Yeah. Well, it's surprising to me that all the hand wringing, and I pay attention, to certain news outlets where people are apoplectic about this. I feel like this was what we assumed all along. If it was a presidential action, he can't be prosecuted. If it was not a presidential action, he could be prosecuted. And the charges are related specifically, in some of them, even like, especially the documents case, they start out by articulating very clearly in the indictment, these were not presidential actions. He did these things after leaving office. He did these things, in a private manner. They did the same thing in the January 6th case. So it surprises me a little bit that, first of all, that it took the Supreme Court this long to come out with this. I think the problem in the ruling is that when they started to sort of suggest what boundaries would be around determining if it's a presidential action or not, they made this thing about not being able to impugn the motives. And that's got a lot of people wound up. But that also feels like it is something you should protect someone in that office from, right? That if the intention is not clear, and therefore you're getting just to their motive as opposed to their actions, then you can't suppose some non-presidential action for something that could be a presidential action.
Yeah.
So some of the things, like maybe him saying to Mike Pence, you shouldn't certify the election. I don't think a reasonable person would say that was an act of his current job. I think that was an act of his campaign and all the rest. So I'm a little surprised that I'm not surprised that Trump is trying to act like this is a victory, but I'm surprised for the other people that they're responding the way they are. And I listened to them all talk about it. It doesn't make sense to me why they're so fired up. If Donald Trump did the things that I know he's been charged with, because I've read the indictments, I've read the Georgia indictments and the 2 federal indictments. The argument is made over and over. These were not part of his presidential duties. They were part of his campaign attempts. So I'm not sure why people are so wigged out about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of it, I think there's 2 reasons. I think one is the timing, because when the Supreme Court made the decision on whether or not Colorado could remove Donald Trump from the ballot, they made that decision very quickly and said, they overturned Colorado's decision to remove him from the ballot and made that decision quickly. This one was, it came at the very end of their term, which, the most significant decisions tend to. But it took this was of grave national importance, and yet it took the longest for them to announce on. And I think people look at that and they say,
the last day that they could announce it, they waited as long as they could.
Yeah. And so I think people look at that and say, okay, the Supreme Court's trying to stack the deck in Trump's favor because Trump continues to try to kick the can down the street, in terms of, when these trials are going to happen. I think, Doug, you're right that in the normal political world, there is absolutely a clear line of distinction between official duties and campaign activities. We have been in Washington, D.C., and been in the offices of Congress people and their staffers who, as soon as we begin to talk about some of the work we do at Vote Common Good, they go, wait. No. Don't tell us about that in here because we can't talk campaign stuff in the office.
That's right.
What email address you use, we're back to the email addresses. You can't do campaign business on your,
Yep.
house.gov email address. There is, if you're going to talk campaign stuff, you've got to go outside of the federal building, do it on, in either in private property or not in, a federal building. So there has always been this understanding that sometimes you're doing campaign stuff and sometimes you're doing official acts of duty. Now that gets really blurry, and because of this whole presidential reelection thing that you mentioned at the beginning, Doug, it gets absolutely blurry at times. And I think people cross the line now and then and go back and forth. I think this just kind of brings into kind of stark contrast that like, ooh, this could be difficult to hash out. And I think the other thing that has really freaked people out has been the dissents by the so-called liberal judges who have said, hey, this ruling turns the president into a king. This ruling, opens the door for a president to, assassinate their political opponent. And Doug, do you see that as kind of hyperbole from the liberal justices, or do you, or this attempt to classify everything as an official act? Do you think that just won't hold any water?
I don't know. That's what's confusing. I don't know if, when Justice Sotomayor makes the statements that she did in her dissent, and she says, according to this ruling, official powers used in any way under the majority's reasoning will insulate a president from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy, SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune. Take a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune. I don't know. I'm not a legal scholar at all, but and she is, so she may know better. But my
gonna mansplain constitutional law.
So is that what they've articulated is, no, you can't use portions of your presidential power to do a non-presidential thing.
Yeah.
That's still a distinction they have made.
Yeah.
So assassinating your political rival is not something that is part of your political duty. So I don't know if Justice Sotomayor is right, that what this means is, as long as you write the note on the White House stationery, give me $5 million and then I'll pardon someone, then it's an official act. I don't think that's what they're saying. I think they're saying,
I heard one legal scholar say, all of a sudden there's a war on America and you have to take out the enemy. And the argument is, you label your political opponents an enemy to the Constitution, an enemy to America, whatever, and then you use the powers of the government to eliminate them in whatever way. That is now immune. You can use the governmental powers of the executive branch in that way, and that's what's got a lot of people worried.
And just the immediate practical upshot of all of this is now all of the charges against Donald Trump have to be categorized.
Yes.
Someone has to make the decision, was this official act or not?
But that was the case before. They just have maybe a different burden now.
Right.
It's always been the case. They were supposed.
But also, it seemed like all of those things are now going to go up. They're all going to rise to the Supreme Court, I think. and the appeals will just keep coming until they get to the Supreme Court. And so, those of us that want, swift justice for Donald Trump and the crimes that he's committed, we're not going to get it. And even, where he's been convicted in New York State of falsifying documents to cover up payment to a porn star, hush money, and violating campaign finance rules in the process. That conviction is now has a bit of a question mark about it.
And that's something where we would all say that's clearly not presidential business. That's campaign business. But it gets before the Supreme Court, and they can just say, no, that's well within his presidential rights.
Yeah, he wasn't even president yet when it happened. Well, I mean, when the deal was made, when the conspiracy was made, he was president when some of the payments took place. However, the judge in New York has now delayed the sentencing of Donald Trump. It is not going to happen on July 11th, like we thought, so that he can review all of this. If Trump's tactic has been delay, this Supreme Court ruling certainly, absolutely helps that.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yes. And if you are suspect of the validity of the Supreme Court, all of this then looks like it's done intentionally to put their hands on the scale of the convictions or not of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So if one has granted that, but if you've granted that the fix is in with these justices, meaning they are not just taking a conservative view, they are changing the view they would otherwise have made for anyone else and are changing it because it's Donald Trump, then okay, then that's that, right? And then then it doesn't matter what they do. You've already decided, okay, we have a broken system and the system has indeed collapsed. So you don't, if you believe that's what they're doing, then you don't need that to have a ruling to be like democracy's over. Democracy is over if that's what the Supreme Court is indeed doing. If these justices, again, are not just taking a conservative viewpoint on these issues, but are specifically changing their perspectives because of Donald Trump. Okay. I don't hold that view. I don't like these people. I don't think some of them are qualified to be justices. I wish they weren't justices, but they are. But I don't think personally. The thing that a lot of us have also had to come to grips with is we kind of thought that the justice system was going to do the work of selecting the Republican nominee, whether it would be Donald Trump or not. We thought that's who was going to do it. It turns out that we have 160 million jurors on election day. That you're not only being asked to decide who you're going to vote for, you're going to be asked, do you think the man is guilty of the crimes? I kind of like that. I like 160 million people going into the...
And it doesn't have to be unanimous.
This one doesn't have to be unanimous. But you go in there with that kind of attitude, right? Yeah. And the look, Mitch McConnell sort of told us the Senate doesn't have to deal with this because there's a legal system. And then later people are saying, well, the legal system can only respond to the political system. So it's been a game of hide the ball all along. The justice system is not designed, this ruling is not designed to deal with someone like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a lifetime criminal who will violate every single nuance of a law, every single moray, every value. He's shown it over and over and over. This is what makes him completely unfit for this office. The office is given too much power for him to have it again. I think that's a great argument that people should be making about it. And if you're going to get down to, do you want the 82-year-old that you don't think is going to do? But now again, if you're in the crowd or you know people, and I certainly know a lot of them who are like, Joe Biden's done more criminal things than Donald Trump. Okay, then again, case settled for you. No worries. Just go off. You think you're going to do. Got it. Yeah. But for other people, they're really going to have to decide: do they really want to give if the presidency has this level of power? Now, I don't appreciate the joke I heard from someone the other day that said, well, if Sonia Sotomayor is right, hey, Joe, call SEAL Team 6, right?
Right.
Is that what we're saying, right?
Right. No.
No, of course not, right? Joe Biden doesn't get to say, I consider him to be, like, it's ludicrous, right? Yeah. Of course not. So we're not going to I know people like to believe that we're a system of law and order. We're not. We're a system of people choosing to behave in ways that make our society work.
And it just became easier for someone like Trump to call a Secretary of State and say, find me 10,000 more votes, and I'll give you a pardon afterward, and we can't be criminally charged because of this. It just became that much easier for Trump to do Trumpy things.
But that's going to be the question in this thing, is when he makes a call from the White House, by the way, for campaign purposes. The president has no role, nothing at all to do with the counting and certification of votes in a state. This is a reminder that we use democracy to run a republic. And it's a republic of independent states that all run their own system. There is no federal power when it comes to counting votes. So I think Donald Trump is in serious trouble on all of that, because it's now going to be open season that they can go after him. What Donald Trump wanted was, as a president, I can't be charged with things. That's not what this ruling is. This ruling was presidential acts only. Figure out what makes a presidential act. So many of the things that we know are in these cases. January 6th makes it difficult. Whatever he was doing on January 6th, on that day, what he didn't do. So I think, like, the idea that you're not going to be able to charge Donald Trump with not calling in the National Guard, because that was in his presidential duties, right? So that's not, it wasn't a crime anyway. Like, the president deciding what he does with the military, pretty clearly inside presidential, powers. That's why you can't be, prosecuted for waterboarding someone or ordering anything else. But also,
Liz Cheney's dad would be in some trouble.
Yes, the president can't do all kinds of things to American citizens that they can do to people in other countries and all the rest of this. So, I think, look.
I'm getting a "Let not your hearts be troubled" vibe from you, Doug, on this one.
No, I think our hearts should be troubled.
No, be troubled, but about
just
different
not
things.
about other stuff.
because of this, the only thing we have is us.
Yeah,
that's it. The laws aren't going to do it. The systems aren't going to do it. The one thing we have in America is that we still get to pick our political leaders, because we let some of the people in this country cast ballots. The people who are allowed to cast ballots need to do so that Donald Trump is not elected president. And if we choose this guy as a nation, again, after what we've seen, if we do what we did in 2016 as a nation and not what we did in 2020, well,
that's on us. Yeah.
So people that don't have presidential immunity and can be charged with crimes and face consequences for them are people like Steve Bannon, who reported to prison this week.
He did.
This is like our moment of zen. Like, it's a bunch of bad news, but also Steve Bannon.
At least Steve Bannon
is going to prison.
Yeah,
I think Steve Bannon had to go take a shower inside of a prison cell area. That somehow just seems about right. I don't like using the criminal justice system for punitive purposes. I don't think it works for that. I think it's a bad idea. I think we've overused it. I think we've hurt humanity by doing it. Just seems about right, though, that Steve took a shower yesterday with kind of a brick wall, hot and cold only, straight spigot. I mean, not a lot different than a KOA campground.
What other choices do you have, Doug?
You know, like a little soap on the thing, like a little a little shower head that you can move the thing around. But he's looking at two little knobs, and that's it. Two little knobs, one straight shower head, nothing else. I think he's only in a minimum security prison, though. Is that right?
Probably like a resort.
No, I actually think I read the opposite, that he's not in a minimum security prison.
Oh,
okay.
I'll have to double check that. I think I read that and was surprised.
Where is he? Where is he?
Yeah,
go see him, because I would love, when we're driving around the country, just to swing by. I think he's in Kansas or something. Just to swing by and see if we just get a couple minutes, talk to him through the glass. That would be great.
Rudy Giuliani was disbarred this week.
Disbarred.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not hear that. That's honestly can't believe he kept his license or whatever this long.
Took a while. Took a while for him to get there.
But do you think Bannon's gonna like pen, some letters from Birmingham jail,
letters and papers from prison?
Oh yeah, he's got
like this is just giving him street cred with certain people.
He's like taking the PDF from Prisons from Birmingham jail and the one from all that he could get from Robben Island in South Africa. He's dumping those into AI and like, write one of these in the tone of Steve Bannon. And then AI is going to write for us a real soliloquy of sorrow and call from Steve Bannon. I mean, he's got to feel abandoned, and he's got to feel like, I fought the law and the law won and all the rest of it, because it's, he's in Danbury, Connecticut?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, okay, Deborah, thank you for looking that up. Is that a maximum security, minimum security, standard security? What level are we talking about? And what do the shower stalls look like? Because nothing tells you. I mean, having been in jail, I've been in jail, and I'll tell you, the showers are what get you. It's that there is a kind of
So I haven't answered the question. Yeah. On the Federal Bureau of Prisons classification system, Danbury is low security as opposed to minimum security.
Okay.
Okay.
According to the Bureau's website, low security federal prisons have double fence perimeters, mostly dormitories or cubicle housing, and strong work and program components. The staff to inmate ratio in these institutions is higher than in minimum security facilities. In contrast, minimum security institutions, also known as federal prison camps, have dormitory housing, relatively low staff to inmate ratio, limited or no perimeter fencing. These institutions are work and program oriented. Danbury is low with minimum security satellite camp attached.
Oh, so is he in the attached satellite, or is he in the heart of the beast? I wonder. All right, and nothing in there again about showers. Nothing about shower construction. About peeling paint off the wall from the waters, because it's
this article entitled "What Steve Bannon's Prison Sentence Will Look Like" says nothing about the the very important questions of what the showers are like in Danbury.
Hey, let me just say, written then by someone who hasn't been in jail. Because
we need to get in touch with someone who's served time in Danbury.
Listen, whether you're in jail or you're out on the Vote Common Good bus, what the showers are like is an important question. Always an important question.
Yeah.
And honestly, Steve Bannon might have more hot water and shower capabilities than us in the bus. So
probably true. Probably true. And speaking of that bus, if you want to join us on the bus and you're in North Carolina, get over to Harmony. We're going to for sure be in Harmony. If you're in Wisconsin or want to be in Wisconsin, get over to Green Bay in a couple of weeks, or get down to Milwaukee. If you're going to be at the RNC convention, where we're going to be raising a little common goodness out in the streets when Donald Trump takes the mantle from the cult followers we'll be out there, and we're going to be running events, campaign events, training events, rallies, all kinds of stuff. So we're going to be out on the road. If you like any of this and you want to be in the tank with us, we'd love to have you in the tank. Head over to votecommongood.com. We have a new In the Tank little page on there, cute little graphic and everything. Love you to fill up a bus tank. If you've ever thought about putting $400 into a fuel tank? Well, we'd love to help make that dream come true.
Yeah. And while you're over there at votecommongood.com, also check out the candidates for common good that are listed on that page. Or you can go directly to candidatesforcommongood.com, and you see all of these really extraordinary, ordinary Americans all over the country that are running for office. We at times have interviewed them, had conversations with them on this podcast. Frankly, what we found when we do that is we don't have enough time to, crack our little jokes about Donald Trump and the state of politics. If we had a candidate on the show tonight, we wouldn't have gotten to that amazing story about RFK Jr. eating a dog. And so what we decided to do is spin off a new little podcast called Common Good Candidates, the podcast. And on that podcast, in the 20 weeks between now and Election Day, each week we're going to be releasing a conversation with one of these really great people who's running for office somewhere in the United States. We're going into the western mountain country of Idaho for our first guest. So tune in tomorrow, and all the places that you consume things on the Vote Common Good podcast network, whether it's YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from, and check out the candidates, the Common Good Candidates podcast. We're going to be talking tomorrow to a great candidate in the great state of Idaho. Idaho, incidentally, Doug, the only state in the United States that has 100% participation of its Democratic candidates for Congress as candidates for common good.
Hot potato. Look at that, Idaho.
And, I asked the question of Kaylee. I said, listen, really all I know about Idaho are potatoes and the blue football field at Boise State. Tell me what else is going on in Idaho. And she did. And really, really great conversation. You're going to enjoy it. So check it out tomorrow. All of these places, and each week between now and Election Day, we're going to be having conversations. You get to know some really great people who are, as Teddy Roosevelt said, they are the people that are in the arena. And, if you're discouraged about who's at the top of the ticket, there are amazing people up and down the ticket. And we're going to introduce you to 20 of them over the next 20 weeks.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So find that in all the same places. If all this feels too confusing, you ever get lost, you ever wake up in the morning, you don't know where to turn, just go to votecommongood.com.
Yeah.
Right there. You'll find your friends. We'll show you some videos. We'll tell you about some things going on. We'll just walk with you. Just walk the road. So we'll see you over there, any of these places, and I don't know, find some common good in the midst of all this.
Are we feeling like next week we're going to be back in the morning on Tuesday morning?
I don't know. Next week I'm going to start driving to.
Yeah, Doug's going to be driving toward me on Tuesday, so we'll have to play that one by ear.
But not Tuesday evening. See, so we could keep it. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll just
let you know.
Podcast. I know a lot of you do depend on it as you do. Your nightly bowl of Raisin Bran, so you can stay regular. When we're on the road, it does take an inordinate amount of time and energy, and sometimes our Tuesdays and Tuesday nights are consumed with those other things. So things will get a bit sporadic at times, so we appreciate you understanding that. That's how it goes.
Yeah. And while it feels like we're winding down right now, let me just say I think I'm glad that apparently we didn't have time tonight to talk about the other news article that was texted. Apparently there's like a castration law in Louisiana. I didn't read this one. I feel like I'm seeing the picture of RFK Jr. eating a dog. What?
Yeah. Arguably worse than the dog story. But yeah, Doug sent this over and I got it ready, so I feel like I have to show it.
castration law. Louisiana's governor signed a controversial bill that will make his state the first to allow surgical castration for people found guilty of certain sex crimes against children.
Wow.
There is no punishment that would be sufficient for people who commit sex crimes against children, for sure. I'm not defending any of that. Surgical castration just feels like it's a line that we shouldn't cross.
Wow.
But maybe I have to look more into it.
Yeah. You know what else I'm not going to
Do
do?
your research.
I'm not going to eat a dog.
No.
Hot dog? Corny dog? What other dogs do we eat? Corn dog, hot dog. I mean, they're all some versions of dogs. I know where you won't eat one. Corn dog, hot dog. In front of a camera at a state fair.
Oh, for sure.
If you don't know that, look at politicians eating corn dogs at state fairs and see how bad it looks.
All of their staffers should always be fired. You never let your candidate.
Frankly,
Oh, boy.
stick when someone's going to take photos of you. You just don't need that.
Yeah.
Castration laws.
Welcome to America.
Right.
And that's why we need some more common
my
goodness.
presidential duties to order the castration of people. What?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, yeah. And there's a lot of decisions the governor has to make. And if, there's like executions, and if this is going to be another one, there's going to be like, what do we do about the castration? It's just, now I do know that some people who've been charged with certain sex crimes do prefer it and want it. I've heard that. I don't know if that's what this is related to or not.
That feels like an elective surgery.
Yes. That the state shouldn't pay for because it's elective. And yeah.
Even if the state paid for it, maybe not mandate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Again,
and look, we are hardcore against the death penalty because it's been misused and misapplied. And people who have been falsely accused and falsely convicted have faced the death penalty. You can only imagine how this would be misused as well. And so, goodness, let's not go down this road.
No, that's why, Louisiana, you're the first state in the union. There's a reason. You don't always want to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Being top of that list, yeah, I'm sorry for you. But I do love people in Louisiana. Man, such good people. I said this, we rode our bikes across the country, as in lots of states. We've been in almost every state. I've been in every state except Alaska in this country. And the people in Louisiana, hands down, just the best. Unbelievable people. Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. And then that shit show. So it's ridiculous. All right. On that note,
We'll
Tune in
see
tomorrow as we have
We'll
a
see you
conversation
tomorrow,
with Kaylee Robbins.
and remember to have your pet spayed or neutered.
before they're eaten by RFK Jr.
RFK Jr. Was he eaten by RFK Jr.? And that was on a stick. Dude, that was a dog on a stick. Now we're going to start making those jokes. I mean, there are some people, I'm sure, who are just, if they hear this, they're just going to freak out because that's just barbaric.
Oh.
But it was technically a dog on a stick, which we already brought up. You don't do that.
Yeah.
No.
Corn dog? No.
And
I'm running for president. Corn
Any dog
no.
on a stick. Avoid.
Inside intestines and then cooked.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Hope you have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
What breed tastes best?
No.
Oh
No.
boy. All right. See you.
No.